we kept growing. We kept serving more and more customers. And I think year 10, we had like 1.3 million shoppers on the website. I mean, there's thousands of shoppers every day that are excited to get their mama's kitchen candle. And we want to be able to deliver on that because these stories are just so amazing. But those years, while we had growing number of customers, profit for the company kept decreasing over and over again.
Welcome to the first episode of Through the Dip, the show about what it's really like to be an entrepreneur and the life lessons learned while navigating your company through the dip. My name is Steven Souter, and before we get started in today's show, this episode is brought to you by Hustlefish, a digital marketing agency that specializes in getting your company unstuck and moving forward. If you're wondering how you're going to grow or how you're going to keep getting your next customer, head over to throughthedip.com/hustlefish and get your free marketing audit. Now, on today's show, how Brittany Whiteneck took her love and hobby of making candles and scaled it into Antique Candle Co., a candle making company that generates $10 million in revenue a year. There's been several different times that I've thought about taking a hobby and scaling it into a business. Because there's that old adage, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. But when Antique Candle Co. started scaling, Brittany found herself getting to spend less time doing the things that she loved and wrestling what it meant to lead a growing company, struggling with profitability, balancing growth, and what would come next. This is Brittany's story about what it means to take a hobby and turn it into a business. Now, she didn't set out to be an entrepreneur. When she was in college, she actually hopped around between a couple different majors.
I graduated from Purdue University in 2012. I did end up changing my major at least twice before I landed in business.
What was your first major?
I think communications. I thought about being a news anchor.
Oh, you were great at it.
That's so nice. And then the second one, maybe social studies education because I like history. And then I took this class and then business was not on my radar at all. Okay. And I just loved the classes. Anyways, my whole life, I worked at Plato's Closet. I worked at Subway. I worked retail, and I actually liked the energy. My dream job was to be a store manager of the Buckle in the malls, the fancy jeans. That was my dream job.
Did you work at the Buckle at all?
I didn't, but I wanted to so bad. Yeah. I interviewed with them, but I was also interviewing with Target at the time when I was looking for a job after college. Mm-hmm. And Target was the first one to offer a job. And I said yes. So my first job out of college was an assistant store manager at a super Target in the Chicagoland area. And Targets are busy. That Target did about $63 million in revenue a year. Wow. They had over 100 employees. I was paid pretty well. The hours were long. I had about 70 team members that were under my reporting structure. So cashiers, cart pushers, guest service desk people, all of that. And as a 22-year-old right out of college, just kind of being held accountable to hit targets and metrics and having to open the store once a day and close the store once a week. It was just really a dramatic change of pace versus college.
Yeah, I should say so.
You enter the real world. I think everybody has their own experiences. But I remember this feeling of being disappointed in myself, trying the hardest I can try to hit certain metrics and still failing. There was this one, how many people can you get to have a Target red card? And I would try over and over again to hit our metrics, and it was just so difficult. But I think
by motivating the team and trying to get the people that were reporting, hey, guys, we got to push this.
Yeah, and working within the system and the constraints that Target had as a large company was really difficult. But I think the hardest part of that job was actually figuring out what my life looked like as a person in management at a large retail store. Specifically, I remember this night where I came home late. I had closed the Target store that night. Target's closed at 11 o'clock. So after you do all the closing, you get home at midnight. And I opened the door to my apartment. My husband was already asleep. And I was hit with this overwhelming, horrible, stinky smell. And I was like, what is that? And I walked over to the sink and I saw, the dishes from the week were piling up
Yeah.
and we were both exhausted from our jobs. And I just remember all I could do was just cry.
Mm.
And I remember like, okay, am I going to wash these dishes and get this the sink out? And the only thing I could do was actually leaned underneath the kitchen sink, grabbed the Lysol and just sprayed the dishes with Lysol.
Yeah. Just because
And
like life was just too overwhelming.
yeah, that was like the moment where I was like, is this life? Is this just being an adult? Because this sucks,
Yeah.
So the only thing I could think to do at the time, after talking to my husband a little bit, was to like quit my job. And the number one thing you learn in business school is do not have a resume gap. Like that is, death to career.
I have quit every job before I've had another job.
Yeah.
Because it gets to a point where it's just like I can't do this anymore. And something that I've been trying to work on is get better at like recognizing those signs. But man, I think I just have like this give it my all kind of mentality, and then all of a sudden you're way past the point.
I don't know if I've ever met anybody else that's so open about that. What are the signs for you, and like how do you know what they are?
Or... Oh, if I knew what they are, I wouldn't get there. No, it's this like I don't know, it's kind of almost like a form of stubbornness, maybe a little bit, where it's just like something at work isn't going well, and then I just double down and I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit whatever benchmark or metrics, and I hold myself like accountable to that until I have nothing left to give. And so I think as I've gotten older, it's about trying to like see that coming up before all of a sudden I just feel completely stuck and I don't know what else to do except to quit. So you quit your job and you're finding yourself, and as you're kind of just taking some time off and discovering what you enjoy, candles just come creeping in.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because I even though I went to business school, like I didn't think I wanted to start a business. It's never been a goal of mine. So I was making candles. I bought a $200 candle making kit online. Nice. And I just really enjoyed the candle making process, like picking out the fragrance oils, mixing it with a wax base. You can add color. You can turn almost any fireproof safe container into a candle, which I thought was really neat. Like old coffee tins or an old blue jar, mason jar that's like 100 years old, vintage teacups, that can hold hot tea, water. Like I would turn those into candles, and that was really interesting and creative.
Would you burn most of the candles yourself, or did you give them away?
Yeah, I burned them. I think one year I did candles for everybody for Christmas. Nice. Since, again, we were on one income. So I was like finding ways to be economical in all kinds of ways. So when I remember thinking, okay, I'm ready to work again, whatever that looks like. And I was looking at job postings, sprucing up my resume. All while I was doing that, I also had this thought in my mind. I wonder if people would be interested in these candles. Like, would anybody buy these? How would I feel about starting my own business? And at that time, it was 2014. So Etsy was kind of becoming mainstream. Yeah. So it was basically, there was an artisan ecosystem around supporting makers. Okay. So that's why that wasn't like a completely wild, bonkers idea.
Were people encouraging you to do that? Like, hey, you should sell these. Like, these were awesome gifts. Thank you.
No, I don't think so. Again, like no one in my family or my in-laws have ever had a business with where they were able to support themselves fully and financially. That I'm at least aware of. So no, but I remember thinking, kind of writing out a business plan, maybe 5 or 6 pages long on my laptop in my dining room table. And I remember thinking, I think I could work up to the salary I was making at Target. I knew kind of the revenue I'd have to hit, how many customers I'd have to engage. Also was thinking about price and margins. Some of those things that I'd learned from business school were helpful.
Do you remember how many candles that was? Like, how many did you have to sell?
No, all I remember is the revenue number I had to get to. It was like, I probably could calculate how many customers. It's
What
like,
was the revenue number?
it was around 500,000 in revenue.
Okay.
Then I could maybe pay myself the target salary after paying, shipping and the cost to make the candles and the domain fees, all of the cost structure that comes with selling stuff online. So I did that. I needed about $2,000 worth of additional candle making supplies to set up a website and all of that. The beauty and the reason that I decided to try having my own business through Antique Candle Co. is the startup costs were actually quite low and the barrier to entry is really low. So I was thinking to myself, worst case, I'll be stuck with $2,000 worth of candles. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Because you love candles.
I'll burn them eventually, and then I can always go back and get another job. So it wasn't like
Christmas
this big risk in that sense.
Yeah.
It felt like I worked out doomsday, you know.
And you'd have Christmas gifts figured out for the next 10 years.
Yes.
So
it's like, why
whose
not?
dream isn't that?
Yes. The issue, I started my website. The issue though was that no one knew about me. I underestimated who's my customer. How am I going to find? So I would go to craft fairs the first couple years.
Who was your first customer? Do you remember?
Probably my mom or my grandma.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the first candle was that you tried to sell?
The scent that was my favorite, it was vanilla. I just like pure vanilla or vanilla bean. I would make a ton of those. I think that was the first scent. There's 2 other scents that still exist today, almost 11 years later, that I made in my kitchen. Everything else has been discontinued over the years because it kind of, products kind of come and go.
Yeah.
It's Mama's Kitchen and Clean Cotton. So Mama's Kitchen is named after my mama, and it smells like apple pie plus a little bit of pine. So think green apple, cinnamon, nutmeg, like golden buttery crust and some pine. It's so good. It's still one of our most popular candles that people order.
Nice.
Yeah, it smells awesome. I'll have to give you one.
Don't
let me forget.
That'd be awesome. When you were thinking through your business plan, going to business school, people talk about solving people's problems and like having unique solution and stuff. Like when I think about the candle market, it's like it's very saturated. It feels like it'd be really hard to stand out. Like, did you think through like that risk at all, or were you just like, no, like I love these candles, other people are gonna love them too?
That's a great question. I remember learning about that too. No, I did not think about the unique problem or unique solution. Of course, the unique problem is people's home, like they want their homes to smell awesome.
Yeah.
But I always wondered that because you know how you walk through the wine aisle and there's like 100, 200 brands of wine. How do they all have room in the marketplace? But actually, we take up a very, very small portion of the market share in candles, even in the United States. According to the National Candle Association, about 70% of U.S. households will purchase a candle this year. Wow. And I think there's like, I want to say 300 million households in the U.S. And we just represent less than 1% of candle sales in the whole United States. Yankee Candle and then some of the brands that they also have come to acquire over the years own most of the market share. So there's even room for people like us or small makers. It's kind of amazing.
I think that's really cool because that's like one of the things that I love about your story is that like there's so much pressure, I think, when someone starts a business to like come up with this like crazy unique thing and invent something brand new. And there's just so much pressure in that versus just like doing something you love and showing up and doing the grind.
I agree.
What did that grind look like for you? So like you have candles and you start going to like farmers markets?
Yes. Farmers market. The Chesterton European market was the first one in Chesterton, Indiana. Nice. And sometimes I'd travel to Tennessee to go to larger markets. So, wow. And we would probably meet about 50 to 60 new customers every market. And we would get excited if we would sell like $1,500 or $2,000 worth of candles. It's a lot. Yeah. I was making all the candles myself by hand, and setting up the booth. I would design the booth. I would talk to customers. I would have the little POS, to process their order. So that was just the first few years. Eventually it got to the place where it didn't make a lot of sense. I started to I started social media and I think maybe email lists. So I was able to converse and have with shoppers online, which was a little bit easier, more accessible than me kind of packing up candles, setting up shop, and then 2 days later tearing it down. So I would just launch a new fragrance or do a candle of the month and then just let them know. And then that's kind of when I was like, okay, we're on to something.
And were you just pouring them into random containers, like
Yeah.
coffee cups and bowls and
Yes.
things that you found?
Yes. And we had what we refer to as like the mason jar collection. So like these mason jars, they're not authentically old, but they kind of have that vintage farmhouse feel with the old zinc lid. It's a little bit more affordable. It's scalable. We can offer it at like a lower price.
Yeah.
So that's what really scaled.
When did you make the transition to adding in those jars?
I think I had them at the very beginning.
Okay,
It's just
nice.
they weren't very popular. The antique vessels that we're talking about, we refer to them as antique candles. We still make them today.
Oh, nice.
Actually, but it is quite difficult. It's you have to take a picture of it. You have to upload a listing. There's one coworker of mine, Emily Devon. She makes all of the antique candles today. So all the knowledge is transferred to her.
Wow.
And so she's like the antique queen, if you will. And she does all the picking. And sometimes I'll go on picking trips, but
Like going to antique stores, finding.
yes.
So
Yeah.
that like vision of these antique candles being
Yes.
contained in these vessels is still like living on
It
in the
is
company,
still
although
living
you
on.
scaled to something.
Yes, like we do make, to respond to the demand, the number of people that want to purchase one of our scents, we have to make about 3,000 to 4,000 candles every day. So that is probably the bread and butter. That's where we give the most attention to as a company to satisfy that demand. So as we continue to grow and more folks find out about us, the antique candles sounds so bad, but really they've kind of become a distraction. But
Yeah.
it's like who we are. It's how the idea was started. It's where our name comes from, Antique Candle Co. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I think like scaling is sometimes the enemy of the whimsy. That is the
Yes.
thing that like created the brand to begin with.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, I mean, you look around at most great brands, and there's this sense of like amazing whimsy that was there, and some are still able to keep it alive. Most like it slowly fades away, and then one day you wake up and you're just like, this isn't the same brand
Yeah.
anymore. But yeah,
That's so true. I love the antique candles.
yeah, I love it. I love that you're keeping it alive, and then
Oh,
you have
yes.
someone that's dedicated to
Even-
making sure it's happening.
Yes, we are. She has a totally dedicated candle making space, completely separate from the other candle making area.
Yeah,
It's quite wild.
Which makes sense because like as you
Yes.
scale, like it threatens that thing.
It
So you
does.
have to like create a whole different process, a whole different system,
It is.
and kind of isolate that thing in
Right.
itself. That's cool that you've done
Oh
that.
yeah, absolutely.
So as the company started scaling, you stopped going to all the different events and pouring all the candles yourself. How do you hire your first employees?
I hired a first employee because I needed someone to help me make candles. So I posted a Facebook ad for a part-time candle maker. I was right next to Purdue University, so I got a lot of like students applying. So I hired one for 20 hours a week. It was kind of scary because I knew I had to pay them. I had to take out taxes. I have to file stuff with the government and do all these things, and that was really hard. I was kind of scared. I didn't know how to do that. But once I figured it out, it was awesome. She worked 20 hours a week making candles, and then that freed up 20 hours of my time, and that was unbelievable. That gave me so much more headspace and creativity back, and I kept pouring more and more time and energy around, I would say, our marketing probably,
Okay.
and our e-commerce store. And that really, I felt, paid off. At the time, I was really focused on social media and organic conversations with our shoppers. And then I think that's when I started connecting with influencers. Again, this is like 2016 or 2017, and the influencer ecosystem was very new and novel.
Okay.
And that I think it probably had a stronger return then as well. And so we teamed up with some folks.
Was it hard to get involved because in the creator kind of influencer
No.
ecosystem because it was so new?
No, it was actually easier, I think,
Okay.
because basically you would DM them and have a conversation. It was like business owner to creator, and there was no contracts, there was no agency, there was just I'll never forget, hey, can I send you some candles and you share about it? They're like, yeah, I'll share it, for $50. And I'm like, sounds good, cool, send it to them. It was as simple as that. And it was like the wild, wild west, sometimes there was some drama, but it's quite simple. I loved it.
Yeah, would you say that's what kind of propelled you in growth more than the like going to the different markets? And
oh yeah, I would say there's two things that really helped accelerate growth. One was teaming up with the right strategic partnerships with influencers in a very casual format, and then the second one was a focus on, which I know you'll appreciate this as a hustle fish, giving a ton of focus and energy around the e-commerce journey. Like one of the first marketing positions I hired full-time outside of myself wasn't a social media manager. It wasn't a digital marketer. It was a full-time photographer.
Wow.
Which I've come to find is really odd. But at the time I was thinking, what does the shopper need to see in this journey? And candles, gosh, like the reason people buy candles is, does this smell good? Is this going to smell like amazing or not? And they cannot smell it when they're shopping online. So how do we get them to smell it with their eyeballs? And so that's where I thought, if we can create imagery that really showcases the scent profile, that should help with that hurdle. And it did. It helped increase conversion substantially.
Do you think you had to start with like boots on the ground selling before you could get into the social media influencer website selling? Or do you think you could have just hopped there day one?
I think I probably could have hopped there day one. But the craft fairs were really formative for me because although I hardly made any money, I think the first year in business, I made about $16,000 in revenue. Again, like I got to work up to my target salary. Okay. Baby steps. But I remember looking back, I can see how I discovered who my customer was. I had no idea, who wants these candles that look and smell like this. And I was just able to see who walked into my booth, who kept walking, who walked into my booth and then left, and then who walked into my booth and wanted to know more about the product and then converted. That was highly valuable, and I think I underestimated that in the early years.
So like you only made $16,000, but the information that you got is what allowed you to probably take the photos that would resonate with that audience, because you talked to hundreds of them.
Yeah, and it's not like I was super businessy about it. It's just like information I had observed and probably was using to help inform decision making and prioritization to scale it.
As you were scaling it and you started hiring people, how did you like do budgeting and finances and decide what you were paying yourself versus other people? Because you have this goal of replacing your salary, but as you hire people, it takes some of that money away.
Dude, there was like not really good plans the first 5 years. I'll tell you something, Steven, dude. There was one day in my office, I think I had like 12 or 13 employees, and it was just like a hard season, and I wasn't really looking forward to work that much. I remember sitting in my office and I'm like, I remember thinking, I need to get paid more. I remember thinking, what's the amount if I started making tomorrow that would re-engage me, re-excite me to where like I'm getting paid to show up here and add intense value. Yeah. I just remember thinking there, and I'm like, a number just popped in my head and I'm like, can I afford that? Yes. Okay, I'm going to do it. That would just update my salary. And that was like year 4 or 5, I would say. Nice. And that just re-engaged me, kept me going. That's such terrible financial advice, by the way, but that's what I did.
Like staying engaged is important. How long did it take you to get to the target salary then? So you started, first year was 16.
Yeah, it was then.
Okay. Yeah. So you were like, I made it. Like,
yes.
Goal achieved.
It was 2019's year 4. Yes.
How long did you think it was going to take you when you first started?
I thought it might take 4 or 5 years.
Okay, nice.
And I was okay with that.
Right on target.
I was having fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So as the company kept growing, your role and job changes a lot.
Yes.
I'm sure. because instead of going antiquing, finding fun things to pour candles in and like mixing the scents, what does your job turn into?
My job turned into kind of more of a traditional COO or maybe CEO of a smaller company. And I was no longer out on the floor helping making candles for an hour or two every day. I was in my office looking at like return on investment for influencers, looking at new products, fragrances to launch, trying to decide who do we hire next, what do we need, do we need a new space, we're outgrowing this one. It became more businessy, which was somewhat interesting to me, but it kept intensifying. I think from year 5 to year 10, it just became more and more what I felt like a capital allocation game.
Yeah.
And the challenges were different. They were more complex, still somewhat creative, but I don't think it was really difficult for me to accept that as my new reality. I like being in the weeds.
Yeah.
Which a CEO is not supposed to be in the weeds, basically. I love kind of getting my hands in there and having a say in all the details. I do think it is helpful, but maybe that's just the creative founder in me who, wants to take something from scratch and build it and process that and get feedback from customers and continue to change. And I don't know. What do you think?
I think that as roles change, what jazzes you up changes too. But what gets you really excited is some unique combination of stuff. And there's moments in life where you have that unique combination, and there's moments in life where it doesn't exist as much.
Yeah.
So as the company kept growing, how was stepping into that role more as the CEO? Because all of a sudden people are probably asking you to do things you've never done before. If you make a mistake, it has bigger implications than it's ever had before. How did you make that transition? Did you have advice from other people that you could go to and ask, or you just kind of figured it out as you go along?
Yeah. I think year 6, we were shipping candles to maybe 30,000 customers or so. And I started to feel like I was barely treading. Like I was like, I'm in above my head, but I have demand. Like there's something here, but I know I need to be showing up differently. I have no idea what that is. Yeah. And so that year is when I was really seeking out peers, peer groups, hired some coaches, paid a mentor, like just putting people around me who have walked my path that can really help. And that probably got me through from year 6 to year 9 or 10. Without that, I do wonder if Antique Candle Co. would exist, just because I was able to bring my biggest issues, my biggest problems, or my fears, or even the sense of loneliness to somebody who wasn't on my team.
Yeah.
And to really work through those and just get to the next step. It's not like I was defining the vision for the company 10 years from then, but I was able to keep responding to the demand in the market that wanted more and more candles to be made, because eventually we got to a point, I think it was year 7, dude, we were making, I think 1,500 to 2,000 candles a day at the time. Wow. We were making them the same way I was making them in my kitchen, dude.
Wow.
And the way to make that many candles the same way you do in your kitchen is you basically hire an army of candle makers. And you look out, there's 30 people hand making candles. It's so inefficient. There's so much waste. And shipping's where are our candles? People are waiting on their order. Yeah. And then the candle making army's we're going as fast as we can, man.
Yeah.
And then all the while, the customer service team's in the office, we're refunding orders. People have been waiting on their order for 2 weeks. What are we doing? And there are light bulb moments like that where I'm what do I do? What's the next step? For example, in that scenario, the next step was some form of automation to help with the process.
Yeah.
Can we get a big wicking machine that puts the wick in the candle faster? Can we have a way that pours the candles a little bit faster instead of hand pouring every single one? Do we have to label every candle, or can we print on the jar? It looks nicer, it's faster. So there were different business scenarios like that working with others outside of the organization helped it get us past that difficult hump of the next thing.
Were you jazzed up about the company, like as you were figuring those things out? Like were those fun business problems to solve?
Those were fun business problems.
What were not the fun business problems?
The non-fun business problems were probably around high-level business strategy and connecting all the dots between a people plan, a product plan, a marketing plan, and then a production plan, and like getting them all to row in the same direction. Was really, really painful and difficult. And I tried a lot of different things and nothing seemed to be working. Year 8, 9, and 10, we kept growing. We kept serving more and more customers. And I think year 10, we had like 1.3 million shoppers on the website. I mean, there's thousands of shoppers every day that are excited to get their mama's kitchen candle. And we want to be able to deliver on that because these stories are just so amazing. But those years, while we had growing number of customers, profit for the company kept decreasing over and over again. And then I think year 10, the reality started sinking in that, you know, our accounting firm and then our CFO, they're like, I think we might run a loss this year. We're projecting to run a loss. And I had always been profitable. I've never taken investment. Even if like that first year we made $16,000, I profited like $1,000 so I could buy more candle fragrances. Like that was kind of like a little, like an invisible pride badge I had, you know, as an entrepreneur that, you know, every year I could somehow turn a profit, even if it wasn't much. Like I think I wore that really proudly without realizing it. And when I received that news, that was just like devastating. Like I felt like a failure. Like, what am I doing wrong? 10 years, you know, and there's no plan to like redirect the company or to turn it around. And I didn't know what that was.
And that everyone's looking at you for that
everybody's
plan.
looking at me. I'm the CEO. I'm the founder. Like, I'm the one that's supposed to have the answers. Not that I'm not getting advice, but I just really honestly, to be honest, I just didn't see it clearly, no matter how hard I tried. And that was really difficult. In addition to the fact that I was showing up every day, putting on a smiley face, but on the inside, sitting in my office, thinking, if there was someone here that I could put my 2 weeks in, I would do it right now. But I can't. So now what?
Is it because you were fed up with the company and just tired of doing the role that you had as CEO, or was it because you like felt stuck and you weren't sure, like you didn't know how to solve the problem?
It's because I didn't like my job anymore. I felt like I wasn't the right fit. And I felt the only way to escape was to leave. But then the story I told myself was, we can't leave. Like, all these people are counting on you. They're planning on showing up. They have their bills to pay, and you're just going to close shop. That's like the meanest thing you could do, you know? I don't know. So that and I felt stuck. Like, there is no way out. I built this prison for myself. And then the next dangerous thought I thought was, you did this to yourself. You got to live with your choices. And so I just kind of listened to that for a while. And then I wasn't the nicest boss either. Like, but when I was honest with my peer groups and shared with them where I'm at, that's when I started to discover and learn that there are other paths. Again, I'd never owned a business before. No one in my family had. My exposure was pretty limited. I didn't know there were other paths. I knew I could maybe sell it. I thought about it. It felt like betrayal to my family and friends that work here for some reason. I'm not saying that's a right feeling. It's just the feeling I felt at the time. I didn't consider that I could step away from the day-to-day, but still contribute and be the owner and the founder. I honestly didn't think that was a reality. And so when I started openly receiving what that could look like or feel like for me with peers, that's when I started to have hope again that there might be a path forward to where I'm not running the day-to-day and the company won't run a loss or...
Yeah. How do you lead a group of people when you're not feeling great about the company's not doing as good as you want it to do, but you need these people to show up and make more candles and market the company more and sell the company more and sell more candles? Like, how do you lead through that? Because on one side, like, there's all this weight and heaviness. On the other side, everyone's looking to you to keep the machine going.
To do the job of a business owner or CEO at the time, it was to engage and inspire others, no matter how hard things are. So I might be feeling negative in here or really struggling with the plan, but then externally what I exhibit to the team is what is my job. They are expecting me to be their cheerleader. What do you need from me? How can I support you? High five them when they nail it on, a product launch, even though we're, struggling over here. That's how I showed up while I was trying to figure out what the long-term succession plan is for Antique Candle Co. Yeah. That's the only thing that I could think to do at the time. Those who were closest to me that worked with me for 7 or 8 years could tell I was off, could tell I wasn't having fun. But to be honest, I think I hit it pretty well. I recently went to a lunch with my coworker a few weeks ago. She was that first candle maker we were talking about earlier, the 20-hour-a-week candle maker. She eventually graduated Purdue and then worked, she works in our marketing team. And she said something to me I thought was really powerful. She said, "I'm really glad that you're in your new role. I could tell you're much happier."
Yeah.
She was basically saying, I kind of knew all along, like she'd seen the journey, the scale up. She had been through the hard seasons, the cash freezes, and when someone would leave, we wouldn't necessarily backfill the position immediately because it wasn't a good decision. She experienced all that and she knew me so deeply.
Wow.
And she said that. And that was really validating for the eventual choice that I made to hire a CEO at year 10 on our 10-year anniversary and step into my new role, which is, it sounds made up, but I promise it's not. It's chief visionary officer,
where
I define the vision. I contribute to ideation and still to get to talk to shoppers, things like that. But I'm not bogged down by the capital allocation, getting teams all a row in the same direction, making capital expense, decisions, things like that.
When you were feeling stuck, how did you start getting unstuck? So like you didn't like your current role, profit margin was tanking. How do you move from this place of being like, I hate this? How do you start working out of that? I
shared with maybe 5 to 10 different people, basically two main peer circles. And that's when I started to hear other stories about what they've done specifically in my situation. Like there are people who built things, scaled them, and then were like, this is great. I love it. I want to be involved, but I don't want to run it. I have this other idea. Yeah. And then they would properly exit from their day-to-day running it so they could start their other thing. And maybe this is like normal information, but to me, I didn't even think that was possible. You know the show The Prophet with Marcus Lemonis?
I don't.
Okay, it is like such a fun show. There's something he said on that show on one episode, and it just stuck with me. And he basically says if you own a business and you're an entrepreneur, you have to be there every day in the grind to run it properly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's true, but that is like, I considered that as like actual legitimate gospel truth.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I'm thinking, if I'm not here every day grinding with my team, am I even a good business owner? The answer in my mind at the time was no. And I think that's completely false. So I had to not believe that lie, basically. that I've been telling myself for years.
When you started talking to other people about what you were feeling inside the company, getting out some outside advice,
Yeah.
was that scary and hard to do? Or was it like, I have to give this to somebody else?
In my experience, I got a lot of praise from people like, oh my gosh, look, you started in your kitchen. This is amazing, blah, blah, blah. Like, you kind of think you're pretty smart and like feed your ego, you know? So when there is authentic struggle, for me, it was really hard to ask for genuine counsel.
Yeah. Do you wish you would have done that earlier?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, there really were 3 clear years of kind of profit decline. But again, looking on the bright side, like, here's the story I told myself. The number of customers we have keeps growing. We're doing something right. Like, look at sales. It keeps growing, And it's just funny.
Yeah.
What you tell yourself.
Did anyone give you advice that, like, you know what, it's okay not to be profitable all the time? Lots of businesses aren't profitable for years, especially in the tech world.
I know. And my husband's like a tech startup dude. I do wonder if it's okay. I think there's a part of me that, again, that badge that I like, there's a part of me that, like, my expectations on myself is, even if it's $1,000, like, we can say we were profitable. I don't know if it's because we don't have investment or the success of the company is tied to the amount of collateral that we have with the bank, or just like my personal wealth, which, I mean, it's not that much. Like, it's just Antique Candle Co. basically. So there's that feeling that we have to succeed. There's not a lot of room for failure. Again, there might be other alternative paths available to us, like taking on capital or investment outside of the company.
Yeah.
That's definitely an option for us. Maybe I should be more open to those. I don't know. Still got a lot to learn, Steven.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So you ultimately decide that this role isn't for you. How do you start untangling yourself from the business? Because you are like the heart and soul of the business.
Yeah. Very carefully. I had a mentor. I had a few mentors and the coach I was paying. I actually built a roadmap of a succession plan with like 4 or 5 different phases, and basically executed that. I had a lot of people look at it who had kind of been through it before. Hey, you need to make sure you do this. Hey, you need to make sure you tell the team this here. Hey, here's how you tell people that you're stepping down from CEO, and here's the new CEO. What does that look like? Like, painstakingly going through that whole process. And it was about a 1.5 year roadmap to where it's pre-work, executing, and then post-work. Wow. So we're about 10 months post the new CEO installed. So I feel like I'm in my groove. There's some things I'd like to improve in how I show up to still support the company. But the company itself, I think it's been a successful transition. The person who stepped into the role was here for 7 years. She was the one behind the scenes building the plant and making things work to get here. If she was not in the organization, I don't think we would have scaled the way we did that quickly and not go out of business. So I knew she had some skill sets.
And has a lot of history with the business.
A lot of history with the business.
Did you think about ever bringing somebody in from outside that did not
I
grow up with the
did.
business?
I knew that yes, I did. I looked at all the options to see what was the best choice for the organization, really trying to put my personal bias aside. And I invited outside collaborators kind of secretly to evaluate the teams, the company. They were here, they did interviews, they talked to people.
What was the ruse? How'd you get outside people in?
I would invite them, and I would... And I wasn't being dishonest. They were also there to give me feedback as a leader. Yeah. So, but the thing was, hey, they're here. They're job shadowing me. They're sitting in meeting. They're watching me observe so they can give me feedback. Because I don't have a boss. They know that. And they know I want to grow too as a person in my career. So those folks would come on board and do that. And that was And also we did that too. But yeah, it was also like, we also know that there's this plan here. How would this look?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 10 months in from the actual transition.
Yes.
How does it feel now to show up to work? I mean, we're here in Antique
I
Candle. You're
know.
here at work.
Yes.
What does it feel like walking through the doors? Is it different?
It is different. I'm supposed to come in only one time a week physically. And that is really good rule to live by because it keeps me from meddling.
Yeah.
Because I had to break a 10-year habit.
Yeah.
A 10-year habit of having a say in how everything goes, generally. And I could do most of the jobs here. I've done most of them before it kind of scaled up. Not all of them, but most of them. But generally, I feel lighter. I feel interested in the work that I'm doing. I feel like I can show up as an authentic cheerleader and not just to put on a mask, basically, as my job.
Yeah.
And that feels pretty good.
Has it been hard, though, to let go?
It was really difficult the first 6 months because I was surprised how much they didn't ask for my input or opinion. Again, like I feel like entrepreneurs can love themselves. And that was a hard pill to swallow. But also a really welcomed reality that no matter what my life looks like, Antique Candle Co., the idea of it, what it does, how it brings delight and a positive light to people in their homes can live on. It's not the Brittany Company, it's Antique Candle Co. And it feels that feels good.
As you scaled the company and your role changed, what advice would you give to yourself, knowing what you know now, like, or someone else that's listening that's like, they started a company, it was just them, and now there's 10 employees, there's going to be 15.
Right.
Like, what advice would you give them?
The advice I would give is delegate and elevate somebody else to run the day-to-day if you are able and willing to let go. If the idea of showing up to work one day a week is okay to you.
Yeah.
If the answer to that is no, the only option I could think is to sell it or move on or close it but I imagine if you get to a point where you have that many employees and you have that many customers, it might be worth something to maybe hand off to the next owner to continue the mission or whatever that is. If I could have not waited to year 10 and done it in year 7 or 8, I think it could have saved a lot of pain and suffering. But the whole point of your podcast is acknowledging the fact that dips happen and they're part of the journey. So I'm trying really hard to embrace that and welcome that.
Yeah.
And allowing me to talk about it has been really helpful. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad. What do you think you've learned the most about yourself in this process?
The thing that comes to mind, I'm just going to say it. What the heck? I suck as a CEO, dude. That is the biggest thing I have learned, dude. Just because I started a business does not mean I'm a capable CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. That's the biggest thing I've learned. And
was it hard to be okay with that learning?
Yeah, I think you could still tell. It's hard for me to say, but that's literally what enters my mind when you ask that question.
Yeah.
It's not very philosophical for sure. It's just
what
I learned.
I think it's more philosophical than you realize maybe, because I think the culture puts so much pressure on great leaders or leaders that can lead large organizations, and that is somehow more valuable than a leader who can lead a small organization. Yeah. But they're two different people with two different dynamics, and one person who's good at this huge organization thing can be terrible at something else. Or even you move CEOs from one business to another business. If you look at the stats, it doesn't always bode very well, because what someone is good at in one context, you switch that context and everything can change. It's hard, I think, for me sometimes to be okay with not being, I don't know, as big as you can possibly get. Yes. Or as like there's this pressure, I think, from, I don't know if it's culture or society, or maybe it's just me internally, that's like, you have to grow the thing, you have to get bigger, and you have to do it all yourself. And it's like, that's not how it works. What are you looking forward to most right now?
Right now, I'm looking forward to the fact that our new CEO is counting on me to bring 2 or 3 big ideas to introduce like next year.
Oh man.
So I do love that. I feel like I can show up in the best way, like with my entrepreneurial mind, just understand who our customer is, chat with them again, and build something new, a new way of how we operate or a new way we, engage in the market. That feels pretty cool. I'm excited to unpack some of those ideas with her and brainstorm with the team. Yeah, I'm excited about that. And on a personal note, I'm excited to have the time and creative energy again to make something with my hands. I've tried all kinds of things. Knitting is completely axed off, dude. I've given it so many tries. It's not for me. So right now at my house, I have all the supplies I need to build a custom frame. Like I really want to take like old maps or pages from like hymnals from church and frame them. So that's what I'm gonna try next. I have the time and energy to do that, just like when I was doing the candleman kit and baking bread,
Yeah. Are you tempted to start another business around it?
Totally. It's the temptation. Business? Yes, because over the past 11 years, as the Antique Candle Co. grew, I had to let ideas die.
Yeah.
And I remember having to think, like, do I commit to Antique Candle Co. again, or do I pursue this other thing? I think I saw some quote or whatever, and it's like talked about creative entrepreneurs and the biggest threat to the company they're growing is their next business idea.
Oh man, that's my problem right there.
That is so true though, because you have all these ideas. And so, yeah, so now I finally feel like I can responsibly pursue those.
Yeah. It's so true. I feel like I've almost tanked our company several times by pursuing
I did the same
completely unrelated things.
There's solidarity in that, man. That's awesome.
Cool. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the show this week. That was Brittany Whiteneck, the founder of Antique Candle Co. If you want to check out all her amazing candles, head over to antiquecandleco.com. Now, we release an episode every other week, so click subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to this. But what would really mean the world to me is if you head over to throughthedip.com and sign up for our newsletter. Seriously, I get a little ping on my phone every time someone subscribes, and it completely makes my day. Catch you in 2 weeks.